So first, what we need is to know who we are and to know who they are. Nachon, David?
Right.
If they're like angels, then we're like a bunch of donkeys, the Talmud says. We're not on the level of their greatness. Yet we try to understand what's happening on our intellectual level. And that's a mistake. Therefore, when we learn the Tanakh, it's good to raise these questions that we're raising as if we think we understand. And we can often say out of humility, it appears as if. And let's reset the questions that we raised yesterday. It appears that David is inactive by sitting in Yerushalayim and not sending himself to the war. It appears as if David did not learn from the former war against Ammon. When we learn about the two generals, Yoav and Avishai, they're like fighting on several fronts at the same time. It appears that David is sleeping until late in the day, which is uncanny of him, because we learned in a Gemara that he would get up at midnight, praise Hashem, and go forward. And it doesn't seem like a guy that's, sleeping in the afternoon. And here he's getting up in the afternoon. And it appears as if he's not congregating together worshipers and a synagogue people. Let's recite Psalms on behalf of the Jewish people in the war. It appears, again, we want to act with humility. We want to speak out of Yirat Shamayim, out of God-fearingness. And therefore we're careful and we use the word, it appears. Now, it appears that what? David getting up, he's going on top of his roof? What does that mean? Again, I'm not looking for answers right now. And we're going to have answers. We're going to bring some answers. But what is he going on the roof? And then what is he singing, noticing? There's a lovely looking married woman, lichora, she's married. And she is now bathing herself to purify herself. In other words, she's acting out of spiritual purity. And it seems, as it appears, David is looking at a beautiful looking woman. What does it have to do? It's not the David we know. And then she's pregnant. And then it appears as David is trying to hide the situation by inviting her husband called Uriah Hitti. Wow, I wish I had some wafers. Where'd you buy them? At the Makol. Are they kosher? Okay. Look, he just wanted to be able to walk in at 3:12 and say, I'm late, but I bought some wafers. Thank you very much. No, thank you very much. So this too, doesn't it appear that he's trying to hide it by asking Uriah to come and then having Uriah go home and be with his wife? All of these are solid questions, of which some of them are asked by the great scholar Rav Yitzchak Don Abarbanel. Okay? Now, what I want to do right now is analyze Uriah and ask, is he totally a holy Jew that just wants to be in the army, in the commando unit, and fight up against who? Fight up against the enemy? Okay? Makasha. Enjoy. Okay? So, let's see and notice the behavior of Uriah. It could be that we might be able to prove on three counts, that he's violating a Torah mitzvah. Okay, I was worried. Okay. And let's see the three counts here together, bivakasha. Let's see Uriah's behavior. Pasuk.
Sefer.
Where do we see it?
Which parent?
The command of David in Pasuk Chet in verse 8 of chapter 11. Vayomer David l'Uriah reid leveitcha urachatz raglecha. He's telling him to go down and be with his family. What is Uriah's reaction? By the way, what is David providing? He's providing him a meal. He's providing a gift. Okay? So number one, the king tells him to go down. Now, it appears to us on the outside as if he's what? Covering up. He wants to cover up. But the truth is, if someone was at war and he comes home, are you aware that he has a mitzvah to be with his wife? Coming from the war, he has a mitzvah to be with his wife. And it seems here that he's not doing. Not only is he not doing it, where is he protesting? Where is he protesting?
In the front of the palace.
Wow. In other words, he's demonstrating publicly. He's demonstrating here publicly. So that is a problem because, of course, any soldier must listen to the king. Okay? He must listen to the king. So here, and the Abarbanel brings this point, we're going to learn that maybe Uriah violated the mitzvot of the king on 3 counts. And here is number 1. Okay? He wants him to go down, and he doesn't want to. Uriah wants to stay in Yerushalayim, but he's not willing to listen and go back and go back to his wife right now. So that's number 1. Number 2, what did the king offer him? You saw that at the end of Pasuk Chet? What is it called in English? A takeout, right? The king is providing a takeout food, a feast from the king's, let's say, kitchen. I want to provide a meal. Now, let me just test. Let's just say you received a meal from royalty. Do you say no right away?
No.
Let's say it's kosher, right?
Yeah.
What's the problem of saying no?
It's just a disgrace from the...
It's insulting. Okay? It's insulting. If the king is bringing and sending you a meal to bring for yourself and for your wife, okay, what did Uriah do? He just lies down at the entrance to the house of the king instead of receiving the meal, the royal food. And like you said, it's insulting. Now, is this insult private between Uriah and the king? Rather, where is he sitting? At the entrance to the king. So this would be count number 2. This would be fault number 2 of Uriah. Not only is he not obeying the king, but he is not accepting a royal gift, and he's not accepting it publicly in front of anyone and everyone. Let's see number 3. If any one of you can notice the third problem. I'm reading verse 11. Vayomer Uriah el David. The pasuk that you stated before. Haaron the ark, v'Yisrael v'Yehuda, yoshvim basukot. The soldiers, you know where they are? They're inside shacks. They're inside some sheds. Okay? And Vadoni Yoav, v'Avdei Adoni al Pnei Sadeh chonim. Whereas my master Yoav and the servants of my master, who are the servants of my master? Who's my master? David. Where are they? Are they inside a sukkah? Do they have protection from weather matters? No. You know where they are? They're al Pnei Sadeh. They're in the field. They're out in the sun. Gusty winds, dry weather, and so on and so forth. And you're saying, Vani avo el beiti? Lecho v'lishtot v'lishkavi mishti? By the way, could he be pointing a finger that David, you're the one sitting here, you're the one eating, you're the one drinking, you're the one with your wife, and I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be part of this whatsoever. That could be, maybe he's hinting to it. Before I get to the next part of the pasuk, does anyone here see also a lack of obedience? Where?
David tells him go home. Well, he doesn't.
No, again in Pasuk 11. We're talking here strictly about Pasuk Yud Aleph. Read it again in Yud Aleph and tell me where you see an insult and a lack of respect to the king.
It seems like when Bathsheba and Nathan the prophet before talking to a king, they're just giving respect. Like Uriah doesn't give respect on this.
Show me where Uriah does not give respect here in Pasuk 11.
Well, he doesn't.
That's the second part. We're going to get to that in a moment.
It actually seems I'm scared to say something, but it just seems. It seems like a ho ha ha.
Do you see though it in here?
It seems like it's like a ho ha ha of what. Why wasn't David HaMelech doing those things?
No, but I'm asking you here in the words. Look at the words. I want you to get used to learning Tanakh. And no.
Doesn't mention David. No.
Vadoni Yoav Avdei Adoni. Adoni is my master David.
He didn't call David king.
I thought you were.
Oh, he didn't call David the king. Not only did not call David the king, but who does he call Adoni? Uh-oh. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Very good. This is what the Abarbanel says as well. You're talking in front of the king. He's your master. You don't say, my master is Yoav over there on the other side of the Jordan River. And then you say, the servants of the king, meaning the soldiers of the king, my master, are there. You're not supposed to put Yoav in front of the king. The king should be mentioned first and Yoav second. So from here, we have a clear understanding. The fact that he says Adoni Yoav, and then Avdei Adoni, he doesn't give enough respect to the king. Number two, he's equating both together, Yoav and the king. And he should have said Avdecha Yoav. Not my master Yoav, but your servant. Your general is your servant Yoav. In other words, he's disrespecting the king in a very, very clear way. And for all these three things, not listening to the king and going to his wife. Number two, not accepting the royal gift of food. And number three, equating Yoav to David and not calling David my king, the king, and even talking about Yoav first before the king. All of these three are considered in halacha a merida. Merida b'fi HaMelech, a rebellion in against the words of the king. And he's doing these things publicly as well. Now, I know you. Yeah, you. You might be angry when one of your people doesn't do what they want you to do. Right? You might get angry. Would you please show me the anger of David here?
He gets angry. Doesn't get angry.
He doesn't get angry. What does that demonstrate? Savlanut. He studied Mesilat Yesharim. Okay, David is the most humble person we know. David and Moshe Rabbeinu are two of the most humble Jews that ever lived. David is just so much humility. We read Tehillim, we learn about all his humility. He doesn't get angry. Remember when Shaul was running after him to kill him time and time again? He doesn't show anger. Not only does he not show anger, he doesn't kill Saul, and he had a chance to kill Shaul, he doesn't do it. Now, what he wants to do is not only not be angry, he wants to investigate why he doesn't want to go down. But before he does that, now let's get to the second part of verse 11. How does he talk to the king? Chayecha, in your life. In other words, he's taking, I'm not going to listen to you. Uh-oh. Is that the way you're supposed to talk to the king, sir? You don't talk to the king by saying, in your life, I would never do this. Slicha, you're talking to David HaMelech. You don't talk to David HaMelech and saying, by your life, I'm taking an oath and I would never do such a thing. Does David now get angry? No. What does David do? Pasuk Yud Bet, verse 12. Vayomer David el Uriah, Yoshe beze gam hayom, umachar ashar lechaka. What psychology does David use now? What psychology does he use? If I will allow him to go back to the war, when? Tomorrow. maybe he'll be pacified, he'll accept my offer, and he'll go down to be with his wife. Okay? In other words, attempt number 2 to persuade Mr. Uriah to go to his home, say shalom, have a cup of coffee with his wife, and hopefully be with her as there is a mitzvah. Does he agree, Uriah? As here we see David is trying to find out what's going on. Look at the second part of verse 12. Vayeshev Uriah b'Yerushalayim bayomahu mimocharat. David was mistaken. He stays in Yerushalayim. But there's nothing here that says that he does what? That he goes to his wife. What does he do instead? Pasuk Yud Gimel. Maybe he takes the food. Vayikra lo David, David calls him. Vayochal lefanav, he eats before David. Vayesht, he drinks before David. And he has a few drinks. Vayishakrehu. Apparently he doesn't know how to hold his beer or his wine. Is that what it says in your Tanakh in verse 13, Yud Gimel? That's what it says in mine? Yeah. Okay? Now, what do you think who's pouring the drinks? I think David is pouring the drinks. Do you think, or can you understand why he might be pouring the drinks to get him a little drunk?
To get him to want to be with his wife.
Beautiful, exactly. Maybe he'll want to go down and be with his wife. However, Vayetze va'erev, the evening comes, Lishkav b'mishkavo im avdei adonav, ve'el beito lo yarad. He's obstinate. He's stubborn. He does not go to be with his wife whatsoever. He stays with whatever soldiers. Now, halachically, at this point, can David bring him to the Sanhedrin and have him litigated? Sure he can. 3 different places of what? Of Merida b'melech, of rebellion against the king. We saw 3 violations. 1 is enough in order to bring him to death. But he's not doing it. How does David do instead? David sends a letter. I'm going to send him back to the war. Pasuk Yudalad, verse 14. Vayiva boker v'yichtov David Sefer Yoav v'yishlach b'yad Uriah. And our question is, why is he sending him back to the war and not bringing him to death right now? What does he write? Pasuk Tedvav. What is the order sent in verse 15? V'yichtov b'sefer lemor havu et Uriah. The order is to the general, bring Uriah el mul pnei amilchama. What is this term? El mul pnei amilchama. Now let me ask you something. Do you think the war was started right now? Do you think David initiated the war? Do you think the intensity of the war is started by David? No. There's intensity going on. Whoever's up at the front is the most toughest position. Those in back of them, a little less tough. And those in back of them, a little less tough. But right now, the war is going on and on and on. And what is the order of David? The order is to place Uriah at the chazit, at the front. Does that mean he's going to be killed definitely? No. But it's a place that, yes, casualties happen there. Okay? So what is the written order in verse 15? Bring Uriah el pinei milchama. Pinei, the front of the milchama. Now, do you at all see that there's a direct order to put him in a place which is so dangerous that he should be killed? No. Just put him in the front. Okay? What's going to happen? V'shaftem me'acharav v'nika v'met. Meaning, we can explain this in 2 different ways, the ending of verse 15. The Malbim decides to explain this term. Look, he's going to die. Why is he going to die? Because he's obligated death. Why is he obligated death? He rebelled against the king. Hashem, David has such faith in God that maybe in the meantime, he'll cause casualties to the enemy. He'll do other things. But eventually, he's going to die. That's how David has faith. V'nika, he'll be cleansed. We believe that punishments that we get in our world are cleansing us, are purifying us from any transgressions that we had, so that we get to the world to come in a cleaner slate. Okay? So David, now, on the outside, we can understand David, why he didn't kill or prosecute and litigate to kill him. We're going to learn in tomorrow's shiur that just like the guy sitting opposite me has a Yetzer Hara, don't look at him. So too, David has a Yetzer
I
Hara.
have two names. Do I have two Yetzer Haras?
David, you have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara.
But let's say I have two names.
You have David. You have one Yetzer Tov and one Yetzer Hara. Now, David's Yetzer Hara, we're going to learn tomorrow. We're going to explain these chapters that David is using his Yetzer Hara to build a Beit HaMikdash. David is looking for a wife that will fulfill the prophecy Natan told him. We learned it several chapters ago. Remember, Natan says, you're not going to build a Beit HaMikdash, but rather someone that will come out of your loins will build. That means of all the children alive right now, is one of them the builder of the Beit HaMikdash? No. David, Malka de Mashiach, the Messianic king of the Jewish people, we're going to learn, is not suffering from problems of looking at women. But David is searching through his Yetzer Hara in a positive way, who will be the woman that's going to bring him the friend of God, Yedidiah, that will also be called Shlomo, to be building the temple. That's what we're learning about here. We'll explain it in more detail tomorrow, God willing. And right now, if David would prosecute Uriah and have him killed by the Sanhedrin, and the day after, or week after, David marries Bathsheba, how does it look in the eyes of the public?
Did it in purpose.
He prosecuted him in court so he can marry his wife. That's what it looks like. However, if Hashem will do din, Hashem will do judgment with him, that because of his sin against the king, because Uriah is obligated death, because he disrespected, he disgraced the king on 3 counts, on 3 different times. Okay? Now, that's the order. Uriah happily goes back to the army. Okay? And Yoav keeps the orders in verse 16. Vayi bishmor Yoav el-Ha'ir, vayiten et Uriah el hamakom asher yadar, ki anshei chayil sham. Where is he placed? Okay? Yoav has a siege around the city. Now, if you want to keep a siege around the city, what type of soldiers do you put around the city? Your best giborim, your greatest courageous soldiers. In order to keep the siege of the people of Ammon not to go out, because there are times that they're going to try to get out and direct warfare outside. So Uriah is now put with those soldiers opposite the front. Pasuk Yud Zayin, verse 17. Vayetzu anshei ha'ir. Here it is, an attempt by the Ammon army. Vayilachamu et Yoav. Here's an attempt. They're breaching the walls, apparently. They're leaving the city. Vayipol min ha'mei David. We have casualties. In other words, Yoav didn't make up a new unit right now that Uriah was killed in this. No. We have our spec soldiers up front. And unfortunately, in this attack, we have casualties. And amongst the casualties, Vayamot kam Uriah Chiti. He dies as well. Verse 18, follow. Vayishlach Yoav. Yoav sends the message. Why do you think he's sending the message? Because he received orders from David where to situate Uriah. Now it could be that once in a while, Yoav sends a summary of the battles, of the collisions that are happening here. Pasuk 18 again, Vayishlach Yoav vayiged David kol divrei milchama. So he's getting a report of the war, including who? The fall of Uriah. Verse 19, Pasuk Yutet. Okay? Vayitzav et hamalach lemor kechalotcha et kol divrei milchama ledaber lamelech. When you finish giving the report, V'aya im ta'alecha mat hamelech v'yamar lecha madu nigashtem elir lilachem. If the king criticizes my orders, Yoav, that why did you get so close to fight against these people in the war? We're very well aware that what? That they're shooting us from the top. Try to understand the strategy of Ammon. They put people by the top of the wall. They shoot, hoping that we're going to probably retreat. And then they climb up the wall, climb down, and fight us on the turf outside the city. Until now, no one goes in, no one goes out of this Ammon city. But here we're told, this is the exact story, that they have sharpshooters on top, and that led to the killing, if you remember, in the book of Shoftim that we mentioned briefly about Avimelech. Okay? Now, the truth is, when we read the Psukim, let's skip to Pasuk Kav Gimel 23. Vayomer HaMalach el David ki gavru aleinu anashim vayitzu eleinu hasadeh v'niyeh aleihem ad petach hashar vayoru hamorim et al avadecha me'al hachoma vayamutu me'avdei hamelech v'gam avdecha Uriah Chiti made. It seems here, although there are different ways to explain this Psukim, there was not a failure here on the side of Yoav, but the Malbim says, you know what? Uriah went out of his way with utter devotion to die the death of the courageous soldiers of Israel. In other words, Yoav is informing the king that was not my order that he be where he was, but rather he took the initiative to endanger his life in order to thwart away the attack of Ammon. That's what we understand here. In other words, not only did David not do something illegal by sending Uriah back, and not only did the general Yoav not create a new dangerous situation that did not exist beforehand, but we can see here that Mr. Uriah did something that maybe even endangered his own life, the way he fought, the way he defended Israel, and so on and so forth. And it's not because of a mistake on Israel's side. This is what David is listening to, and therefore, what is the answer? David in Pasuk 25, Vayomer David el HaMalach. David now says to the messenger, Ko tomorrow Yoav, tell Yoav the following, Al Yera Beinecha, don't feel bad. Et hadavar hazeh, ki chazo v'kazeh tochal echarav. Look, in every war, we have casualties. In every war, we're killed by the sword. Okay? Hachazek milchamtacha el ha'ir. Be strong. Okay? May you be able to bring the war back to the city. V'harsat, destroy it. V'chaskeu, and be strengthened. In other words, David tries to encourage. We lost top soldiers, including Uriah Chiti. So here is the words of encouragement of David at Yoav, that it's natural that when we have wars, we have people that fall. Okay? And David is trying to uplift the spirits of them. Any questions until here?
But maybe why Uriah is do it randomly is because he's hangovers.
I don't know. We think that by the time he traveled from here a few hours to get to Ammon, he has no more hangovers. Okay? We don't think that's happening. Gentlemen, the end of the chapter, Pasuk Kavav, verse 26. Vatishma eshet Uriah. She hears the bad news. Ki meit Uriah isha, her husband. Vatispod al ba'ala. What's natural? A eulogy. Someone loses her husband. There's a eulogy. The goodness, his mitzvot, his chesed, his love, his good attributes, so we can learn. Remember, King Solomon writes that when we go, why is it better to go to a house of mourning more than a house of marriage? Why?
House, you mean a wedding?
Why is it better to go to a house of mourning more than a wedding?
It's a true act of kindness.
That's right. It's the true act of kindness. The person you're doing kindness with, he can't do back the favor to you. That's right. But furthermore, what is the objective of the mourning? What is the objective of the sadness? So that we, the ones that are living, can analyze, understand, and take to heart. What can we learn from the person that was so great? And yesterday, I went in the middle of the day, met my wife. We went to pay our respects to a family that used to live in Beit El. The father, the rabbi, in his early 70s, late 70s, passed away. I remember him from 25 years ago. He used to live in Beit El. He's a very big tzaddik, very quiet, very shy. He would never push himself. Every morning he would go up to Birkat Kohanim and give us the bracha. And he would do it because he loved to do the mitzvot. And we remember him for the good, and we can learn from all these great things. Right now, Mrs. Uriah Chiti Batsheva, okay, how is she acting? Is she acting in a worthy way or not? Her husband died, okay? Notice it says Isha, okay? Why do we understand the word Isha? Well, going back to ask the questions. Did David have relations with an Eshet Ish? So at the end of yesterday's shiur, we brought the famous Gemara. It's not Masechet Ketubot, is it? Or Gitin? It's Masechet Shabbat Daf Nun Vav. Anyone that goes to war, the war of King David, he gives his wife a get. And there are two opinions if it's a divorce bill without a condition. And that means that if he comes home from the war, he has to remarry his wife. Or the get is bitnai, under a condition. If I don't come back, then you're divorced. If I come back, then it's not acting as a get. Two opinions in Chazal, how to explain. So we're reading this, we don't know Chazal, and it appears to our analytical, critical eye that God forbid David has relations with a wife. But no, we're saying she wasn't married. How do I know she's not married? He dies right now. That means retroactively, when David had relations with Bathsheba, she was considered a divorcee. Because Uriah gave his wife, before the war, a get, a divorce bill. And now he's not coming back. He dies at the front of the war. So how can she deliver a hesped to Isha? What is the word Isha? With a dot inside. Her husband, exactly. So what do we have to say? The Malbim says we don't explain the word Isha to her husband, because she's really what? Divorced her. But rather, liba'ala, her former husband. That's what it means. She's really delivering a hesped, a eulogy, to her former husband. And that's what the word Isha, with the dot inside the hay, could mean. How many days of mourning are there? 7. Let's go on Pasuk 27, the last Pasuk.
30 and what's a year? 7 for, after that's just Shiva.
Right. Now, all these laws are rabbinical laws. Even the 7 days are rabbinical laws. Just the first day is the Oraita that we know from the Torah. All the rest are rabbinical mitzvot.
Wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu 7 days?
We learn 30 days that they mourn for him. But it's not that Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't say 30 days there, to my knowledge. My dear friends, we now read a very powerful pasuk. Let's read it. The last pasuk of the chapter. Vaya'avor ha'evel. The mourning time passes. We could say that it's 7 days, like David suggests. Vayishlach David vayasfa el beito. After this period of time, he brings her home through a shaliach. Vatilo lisha, and he marries her. Vatele lo ben. Months later, Mazal Tov. And who does this look bad in the eyes of who? Vayerad davar asher asa David be'inei Hashem. Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say that in the eyes of the people it looks bad, but rather it looks bad in the eyes of Hashem. Eh, one of the commentators say, I don't know whether that was your question or David's question yesterday, that it's reasonable to say that he marries her about 2 months after she was pregnant. And people think that when she does give birth, she's giving birth early after 7 months of pregnancy. Now, let's raise the question again. If David, God forbid, violated Gilui Arayot, the laws of adultery, and if David did something bad to Uriah to have him killed, then would the Torah only say that this is bad in the eyes of God? The Torah would say that this is bad in the eyes of Am Yisrael, the eyes of the king of Israel. We don't see whatsoever here any pointing of a finger that David violated Gilui Arayot, or David violated other terrible things, or he tried to cover up the pregnancy of Bathsheba and he did a wrong thing. We want to know, is it only technical or is there something else? Yes, sir. God knows what are the intentions of David. So let's now go further and see how Hashem reveals us what are the intentions of David. Because God sends the prophet to reprimand, to put him in place. No one's making a bracha over this very tasty food.
It's not parve. So
Now we know. Let's read the laws. Is it parva or not parva? I didn't eat the chicken, that's true, so I can eat all of it. Has a hechsher, first of all?
it's parve. These are not.
Are they both from the same box?
No. No, they're also parve. I know. If they're like the same, I mean, I can't.
Almost 99% of the wafers in the country are parva.
I mean, so I used to have them in Tel Aviv.
You know what? Why don't you try it? We'll see what happens to you, and then we'll see.
That's a great idea. How long do we have to wait?
They smell parve.
Okay, now let's read Hashem's quote-unquote reaction. Chapter 12. Vayishlach Adonai et Natan el David. Here he is. The prophet is being sent. Vayavo elav vayomer lo shnei anashim hayu be'ir echat. 2 people living in one city. Echad ashir, one rich. Ve'echad, pronounce the next word. Rush. Okay, usually Rush appears without the aleph. King David uses it himself. Do you remember the law that we go into a cemetery, we tuck inside our pants the tzitziot? So David writes in the book of Tehillim, Lo'eg larash. If we're doing mitzvot overtly in front of the dead, it seems that we're mocking the poor. Lo'eg larash. Lag larash. Rash is there spelled resh shin. Here, it's spelled in our Tanakh with an aleph. Why? Maybe we'll answer that tomorrow. I don't remember right now. And now, here comes the prophet, tells a story. The way he's telling it, it seems that it's a true story, even though in a moment we'll see that it's only a made-up story. Pasuk bet, le'ashir, to the rich person, hayatzon, uvakar, harbe meod. One of the rich person, he has a flocks of sheep and cattle, a lot. He's a very wealthy person. Vilarash, but the poor person, ein kol kiim kifsa achat ktana asher kana ויחיה ותגדל עמו ועם בניו יחדיו מפיתו תאכל ומכוסו תשתה ובחיקו תשכב ותהי כבת. The poor man who has nothing, he only has one little lamb that he bought, and he's feeding the lamb. He grows together with his children. He gives him from his bread. He gives him drink from his cup. He sleeps in his bosom. And he's just like his own little daughter. Okay? That's the story of an Ashir and a poor person. Vayavo Helach. All of a sudden, I'm adding the words all of a sudden. Pasuk Dalet and Perakid Bet. A guy comes, and he comes to Leish Ashir. Chazal will say that this Helach is the Yetzer Hara.
This what?
This person, metaphorically, is called the Yetzer Hara. He comes to the rich man. Vayachmol lakachat mitzono umibikaro lasot laoreach habalo. Okay? What happens? What is this guest doing? Huh? Does he has mercy not to take from the rich man's sheep and cattle. Instead, where does he go? Vayikach et kifsat ha'ish harash vayaseh la'ish haba elav. Instead, what does he do?
To the poor.
He goes to the poor guy, and what does he do? He takes his only animal, his little sheep. Now, here is the end of the story. How do we know? Because we see the reaction of David in Pasuk 5. Now, in order to better understand what's happening here, it seems that the story is being told so that David will give a declaration of law. And maybe Natan, the prophet, is waiting for an answer. And here, what answer does David give? First of all, he gets angry. Vayicharaf David ba'ishmeod. Vayomer el Natan, Chai Adonai, kiven mavet ha'ish. Hosezot. Wow. David thinks literally this is a real story. And not only a real story, David gives a psak din and says that this guy, this thief that took from the poor guy, he's obligated what? Death. He's obligated death. Now, you know, and I know, that if I go into your pocket, I steal your property, I steal your animal, I steal your car, should I be obligated death? Yes or no, according to Torah law? Very good. Right, we learn in Parshat Mishpatim, very good, chapter 21. The laws, quote, Ki gnov ish shoro Ki gnov ish shor oseh utvacho o mecharo chamisha bakar yishalem tachat hashor v'arba tzon tachat hasetz. That's my bar mitzvah parsha. That's why I remember it. Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't remember it. Now you pay 4 times or 5 times if you take it and you slaughter it. But David here is machmir. He's very stringent. He says he's obligated death. Basically, the finger to be pointed in one moment is at who? David. Who is the poor person? Uriah. Who's the rich man? David. He has many wives. Uriah only has one wife. It seems here, and that's our next big question, that David is liable for what type of violation? Stealing property. We thought to see Giluy Arayot, adultery, hiding up this, hiding up that. But here it seems that we're only dealing with stealing property. What's going on? Why are these the words from Hashem to the prophet? But David is saying that he's obligated death. And he should die. We'll continue this point tomorrow, V'ezrat Hashem.